Welcome in, everyone. We are going to get started here in just a few minutes. All righty. For those of you that are just now joining, we are going to get started here in just a minute. I am Jill Summerlot. I am the operations team leader for InSource. And today is Monday, and excuse me. And so today is going to be Monday Minutes. And so I want to invite you in and let's go ahead and get started. And if you would not mind going ahead and getting that QR code utilized for me, that would be greatly appreciated. Remember, we do rely heavily upon those sign-ins and those surveys because we are a nonprofit and we are required to provide certain demographics, and this is part of that. So if you would not mind going ahead and taking care of that for me, that would be greatly appreciated. We are going to go ahead and get started today. Today will be our normal path that we do. We're going to talk about that parent-to-parent guide. We're going to look to see what's coming up this week. We do actually have two things that are coming up this week that are pretty interesting. And so we want to make sure everybody's out there. So go ahead and like I said, the first link is if you're using just the link that I've put into the chat boxes, it's the first link. It's that tiny URL. You're more than welcome to click on that. That will take you to the same place, or you can use your QR code that your device. I know I've had some people comment, they can't use their device, so because they're on their device. So that's why I've tried to make sure that I try and remember to put that link there. And if I ever forget, you're more than welcome to just email me or to just even text me, let me know, and I'll gladly get it out to you. Welcome in, Mindy. I see that you're doing the QR code. Thank you so, so much. I greatly appreciate that. And it is a beautiful Monday morning here. I am in Roachdale, Indiana, which is in Putnam County, Indiana, which is on the west side of the state. I'm about an hour from Terre Haute, or about an hour and a half from Indiana, Illinois line. So yeah. So let's get into our what is coming up this week. I do have a webinar that's going to be on Thursday, and so let's go ahead and we will get to our QR code or to our website. And so let me go out and get it. And so we can look at what is coming up. Bells and whistles and buttons. So here is our website that you've all probably become very familiar with. Again, up in the left-hand corner here, please jump on that F for that Facebook, or to get out there on our YouTube channel, or there's Indeed. And you know what? Every time I click on this bird, I never remember what it is, but it's X. And so please jump out there and get onto our social media. We have very good girls out here on social media that does take care of everything for us. Remember, you can even use our chat features on our website or on our Facebook page, even from 9 to 8 p.m. So we have somebody that's always monitoring that. So please feel free to put questions in there, jump on, let us know how things are going. If you got any questions, you can put them there. You're always welcome to find resources on our website. We have our Get Help, we have our training and our resources. There's just a plethora of information here. And I have to tell you, we were just on we have our, once a month, we get together as a organization. And today we did, and we have it on Mondays at 10:30. So I was reminded today, we kind of broke out into, breakout rooms and had some discussions today, but we also had a new employee that has started, and I'm sure you'll be hearing about her and the partnership that we're going to be having with that a little bit later down the road. But it reminded me as we're in these discussions about how, oh my goodness, I forget again that I'm talking to people that don't necessarily have a special education background. And I don't mean a degree, I don't mean anything like that. I mean somebody that even just knows the lingo, on what we're doing. And so I just want to point out that if you hear me say something or you hear me use an acronym, don't hesitate to say, hey, what did you just mean? Because, you know, um, I just forget sometimes. And so, I'm just going to put that out there that, if I use the acronym TOR and you may don't know what TOR stands for, please stop me and, just ask. TOR, it's a teacher of record. I was using A7 today and not even thinking that this person has no clue what A7 is. And at the end of our discussion, when we're about done with our meeting today, I'm like, oh hey, by the way, I just thought of this. Do you even know what that is? And they're like, no, I don't have a special education background. I'm like, oh my goodness, I am so sorry. Let's just kind of run through this. But, having said that, in our parent guide, there is a place for definitions. There is some of the acronyms that you can find in there too. If you ever get to a point where you're like, I have no idea what that jargon was. But I want, the main part of doing this type of Monday Minutes is to familiarize people with our parent guide, but to be able to come for questions, or even to just have a little bit of an understanding of what something means. And so I just want you to be comfortable. And, as you get further and further down the road in your special education experience, I had no idea when I started with my son, 23, 24 years ago, what I was in for because I'd never heard of any of the acronyms. I'd never heard any of the definitions. So you do get familiar with things, but it does take a little bit of time. Um, Back in the day when you had to flip through an actual copy of Article 7, and not have the computer where you could just use the Control F to find something, you had to use that paper copy. Having said all of that, just know that it will come in time. You will start to, gain that footing of knowing what those different terms are and becoming very familiar with things that you will understand. But I don't want anybody feeling lost or um, that I'm, and I don't mean talking above your head as in being more intelligent, but using things that you don't necessarily know. Call me on the carpet on it. I want you to be comfortable. I want you to understand that, it's a learning process. It took me many, many years to gain the knowledge that I have, and I'm still learning every day, from my coworkers, from parents, so we all do learn something every day. All righty. So let's get into our trainings and let's look to see what's coming up this week. Um, we have our events calendar and we do have a Monday Minutes, which is today, May 12th. Can you believe today's May 12th? Can you believe it's May 12th? Um, my one and only grandson is 6 months old today, but that's neither here nor there. Um, so we have our In Touch, which will be at 3:30 tomorrow. And then on Thursday, which it's not on here, and that is my fault because I did not get the paperwork in till late. So we do have a webinar on Thursday, and it's going to be on CPACs, which are those special education parent advisory council groups that are they're started at that school level. And so we do have coming with us, we have Elizabeth Shepard, who is the director of special education in Plainfield. And they have a fabulous CPAC. And so she's going to be here to talk about Plainfield CPAC. And we're also going to have Stephanie Garner, she is from Down Syndrome, Indiana, but she is I believe, the president of the CPAC there in Plainfield, but I could be mistaken. So join us on Thursday at 1:30 if you are even remotely interested in something like that. Lisa Paddock, who is one of my coworkers, she will a parent lead. She is the parent lead at Plainfield. Thank you, Mindy. Um, so come on in, let's talk about that. Let's talk about how getting a CPAC maybe in your area you can find out about. But Lisa Paddock is the one from our organization that is our main expert on that. So we're going to talk about those on Thursday. And then as you see, if you're in Hammond, you can attend a Spanish Section 504 event, and that is going to be from 10 a.m. to 12 up in Hammond, Indiana. And I don't know if it tells us exactly where it's at. It's at the public library there in Hammond. So if you're in that area and you are a Spanish speaking family, or you have information on a Spanish speaking family you think that would benefit from this, please let them know that there is that training. It will be on Section 504, and that will be on Friday. So let's go back to the event calendar. And then you see next week we will have our Monday Minutes. You'll have your In Touch again with our Jessica Terry and with Michelle Arcatana. They will be tomorrow at 3:30. They will be next Tuesday at 3:30. And then, the last one. So every Tuesday they're on at 3:30 with In Touch. And then we will also have another Spanish webinar on Wednesday evening, and it's online. So it's a Zoom meeting. And we will be out on Facebook Live, and Michelle Arcatana will be discussing communication for next week on that one as well. Okay, that looks like that's about everything that is coming up. And if you have an interest in office hours, put that on your schedule as well. That is on the 27th at noon. And I'm not sure of what the subject is this month. And that is headed up by our very own Lisa Paddock. And she generally has one or two people from the Indiana Department of Education, Special Education Department, that comes on and talks about something relative to our everyday needs and on special education. So that takes care of that information. Again, don't hesitate to jump out here, and you can get our Facebook link. You can go to YouTube, and YouTube is where our webinars are living. We have some little snippets out there, and let's just go out here because um, it's early childhood education. Thank you so much, Jessica. Jessica just told me that it's early childhood for this month. But here is our YouTube channel. And just so you have the information, it's here. And there is all sorts of wonderful things out here. We have our Effect Spring Conference that was just last week. And so you'll be able to listen to it. And April's office hours are there. There's a discussion on extended absences, funding a special needs trust, manifestation determination. So there are several different videos that you can go out here and look at. And then down here are some bite-sized informational videos, and those are extremely helpful. And so please feel free to peruse this as well. All right. But and if you are on our YouTube channel and you're rewatching something, that QR code will pop up in the same spot that it does here and now. And so I would really appreciate it if you would use that QR code as well, if you're even watching something on a replay. We really need that information as well, even though it may be a replayed audio or video. All right, so let's get out here and get some resources. And so here is our parent-to-parent guide in English or Spanish, and we also have our Article 7 or A7 in English and Spanish as well. And as usual, the guide is a legacy product built out of the contributions of department specialists and consultants over many decades. It's been updated to be current based on reauthorization of Article 7 in 2024 and the simplification of language for the purpose of general consumption by parents and others is the sole responsibility of Indiana's Parent Training and Information Center, InSource, and does not constitute legal advice. And if there's any further updates to this booklet, then it will be done through our website link. Here is our table of contents. And the federal and state education departments do fund InSource. It's a statewide parent training and information center that's prepared to listen to your concerns, respond to your questions, and connect you to answers free of charge to you. InSource is dedicated to providing high quality information, training, and support to families of children and young adults with disabilities and the individuals and organizations who serve them. And just another reminder that we are not a legal advocacy agency. We cannot provide legal advice. If you need to email us, we are at insource@insource.org. We are at insource.org is our website. And then we also have our phone number, which is right here, the 574-234-7101. And that says .com. And Jessica, you're on. Will you do me a favor? Will you verify that that is a .com? I thought it was a .org. If you wouldn't mind, that would be greatly appreciated because I think that's an error. Anyway, so let's go ahead and get down into this. We've been through several pages of this. We've been through that child find, educational records, how to get organized. We've done eligibility, identification and evaluations. the reevaluations, that written notice, the independent evaluations. Here is that chart for evaluation timelines. And this is really good, especially if you're in any sort of timeline or you have a question about timelines. We've had a discussion on case conference committees. And now we are ready to get into the IEP development. And so whenever we talk about the IEP development, we've already determined that you are a child that has been deemed eligible and you have been labeled, and I don't mean it like that. You've been identified as one of the areas of the 13 categories that are in Article 7. So you've already had that discussion. Now we have to develop that document. We have to develop that paperwork in order to be able to serve that child in that special education realm and any of those related services that they may need, that the school is going to provide for them. So there's general and special factors. We know that those general factors are those student strengths. So what can they do now and what are they capable of doing? This is also the time that you're going to document those parental concerns. And so whenever, especially if maybe you have had a conversation with me prior to me being the operations team leader, I was a regional, well, it's an SEL now, that special education liaison. Um, but that's one thing that we always did talk about was those parental concerns. What are your concerns as a parent? And you really want to have a good grasp of those because that's going to be documented and you want them documented so that we can address those concerns that you have. And, your concern may be the same thing that the school's concern is, but it's different when it comes from you. It rings different. And you, as a parent, are a very valuable part of that case conference committee because again we're developing this document that somebody's going to be responsible for, and your child is going to be responsible for making sure that they are performing at their best that they can perform at. And just like a teacher of record, she is or he is going to be charged with making sure that everybody that comes into contact with your student or your child has all the necessary information they need in order to give them that FAPE, that free appropriate public education. So the strengths are going to be talked about. Those concerns are going to be discussed. If there has been any recent educational evaluations or assessments, those will be part of those general factors. Your child or student's academic development, communication, and functional needs. Those are part of those general factors that we take into consideration when we start to develop that IEP. So in addition to all of that, excuse me, I don't know what it is about, I think I just talk too fast and then I just can't get enough air and then I start to yawn. My brain, it's a Monday. So those special factors then that we're going to talk about are going to be done when applicable, and some of them can be those positive supports and interventions. And that's mainly whenever those behaviors start to interfere with the child's learning. And so we know that we have to have that positive, that PBS, positive behavioral supports. The language needs of a student, especially whenever it's a limited English proficiency that is related to that IEP. That language and communication needs of a student who is, it could be deaf, hard of hearing, or deaf blind. That's the acronyms you see there, the DHH or the DB. Instruction in Braille for a student who is blind, low vision, or deaf blind. A student's need for assistive technology devices and services. Those are all considered to be special factors when it comes to your students. Again, all of these play a very important role when we start to develop that IEP. The IEP also must contain that PLOP, that present levels of performance. So that academic achievement, whether it be in reading, math, language arts, other subject areas, it's also going to be that functional performance, those physical skills, if there's sensory responses, fine and gross motor skills, personal care. Do you bathe yourself? Do you brush your teeth? Any behavioral, any social and emotional skills, those independent living skills. And, we're talking about maybe sometimes, little kids, little guys that are, could be in preschool. You're talking 3 and 4 year olds, but there are some independent living skills that they should be doing at that age too, as well as, on the other end of that spectrum when you're talking about juniors and seniors. So, are you dressing yourself? Are you cooking for yourself? What do your independent skills look like? Are you doing your own laundry? But believe it or not, I've talked to some parents and they've taught their kids to do laundry at 4 and 5 years old. So yeah, that's part of that independent living skills. So it also, part of that present levels of performance is how that student's disability affects their involvement and the progress that they're going to make in that general education curriculum. So that's all of those present levels of performance. So we have general factors, special factors, then we talk about present levels of performance, and then we move into behavior needs. Is there a need for there to be a functional behavioral assessment? And the acronym is an FBA. And so are we going to need something like that? Are the behavior needs at the point that they're that large that they need that functional behavioral assessment? Now, when you talk about an FBA, that is data that's collected and it is going to be used so that they can identify a pattern of behavior and maybe the purpose or the reasoning behind that behavior for that particular student. It does look beyond the behavior itself and as a disciplinary problem. So it's going to be able to identify significant student-specific social, emotional, intellectual, and environmental factors associated with those specific behaviors. That FBA, that functional behavioral assessment, does offer a better understanding, a snapshot per se, of the function of or purpose behind the student's behavior. And, we want those behaviors to be lessened as, they do, we don't want more behaviors, we want less behaviors. And so we want to make sure that we're doing positive behavioral intervention supports so that they can address those things. But you want to be able to also address the root of this problem of why the behavior is what it is and why their student is doing what they're doing. So after you have that FBA, what you're going to have spin off of that is a behavioral intervention plan. So you're going to have a BIP. And this is, again, part of the document that is going to have to be agreed upon by the case conference committee. And so, that information has to be shared with everyone so that there can be, as the paragraph points out, a hypothesis of why a student exhibits a specific behavior. And so the BIP can be a companion document. However, it's frequently recorded in the relevant sections of the IEP. And so you can go looking in your IEP for the documents, especially if you know that you've had a BIP that's been done before for your student. And the student's behavior plan, that is something that is developed and it's agreed upon by the case conference committee. And so they're going to be utilizing the information from, was this something that happened during the day? Was this something that happened at home? Was this something that happened on, at recess or in math class? And so, there has to be a functional reason why um, the behavior is what it is. If you have a child who is participating in alternative assessments aligned to those alternative academic achievement standards, there may be a description of benchmarks or short-term objectives in order to make sure that they are getting down that measurable annual goal. Oh, excuse me. Progress monitoring. And it's not really boring. Again, I don't know why every time I get on here on Mondays, I just yawn. Um, I'm so sorry. But the IEP will specifically lay out the progress is going to be measured and it's going to be also discussed when you would be receiving information on those progress and the monitoring paperwork. As it says in the paragraph, it's important that the plot and the goals are written in alignment in a manner that can be easily measured and supported. And the school is required to provide progress reports to the parents as often as progress reports go home for students in a general education setting. So when I went to school many, many, many years, excuse me, many, many moons ago, we had ours was on 9 weeks. And so when I got into high school, we had progress reports. Wasn't in special education or anything, but I remember, especially in algebra, because I was horrible, horrible at algebra, that I was told by the math teacher, the algebra teacher, you're going to get a slip sent home, and because you're not doing very well in algebra. I didn't know any different. I had no idea. It's like, well, what is it? Why do I need that? It's to inform the parent of what's going on. The reason why I went down that rabbit hole was because whenever you talk about sending home progress reports, it depends upon what you as a parent feel that your need is for those. And depending upon the behavior, you may want to do it at 4.5 weeks. You may want to do it at 4 weeks. You may want to extend it all the way out to 8, 10, 12 weeks, whatever that period of time looks like for you. And so, again, it's going to be up to you and making sure that some of those things are really done. And so just make sure that you as a parent, you're very familiar with that IEP and what is written into it. So the progress reports are generally, you'll hear them say that they are going to be coming home at report card time. You may want them then, you may want them sooner, you may want them, maybe, depending upon what the goal is, you may not need it till the end of the year. I mean, it just really depends upon what those individual needs of that student are. So when we talk about services, the IEP has to identify services that provide support to that student. And so that would include those special education services, related services, and the supplementary aids and services. If the program is going to be identified as modified, let me start over. If the program is identified as a modified curriculum, then the IEP has to contain um, information that describes the modifications or supports for the school personnel. So you just have to be kind of careful that, what am I getting into here? Okay, making sure that I got everything. So in this document, it is going to have some other specific things that it has to have. It has to have the beginning and ending dates of these services, how often the services are going to be done, and or how long will they occur, how long each service or support will last, and where the student will receive the service or support. The services have to be able to enable a student to advance advance appropriately for that annual goal. And again, your goal, very simplistic, your goal maybe is that um, by August 1st 2025, you will have increased your reading level from 1.0 to 1.5. Those are just, that's just an example. I don't even know if there's a 1.0 or 1.5. But what I'm saying is this way you can see, you can monitor, you'll be able to understand what that progress is. As a parent, you want to be involved in and make the progress in that general education setting, because you want to be involved with that, because general education is where we want our students to be, where we want our kids to be. And so, they can be in that section per se, but they may need additional supports with that. And we don't, down another rabbit hole, we don't want to modify, we just want to accommodate if there's any of those things that has to be done, part of those services and supports. This also will enable a student to participate in extracurricular and non-academic activities. That is information that can be written in there. Again, be educated and participate with other students with with disabilities and our non-disabled students, so that you are given, that you're afforded that right to be with your peers. So participation with non-disabled peers. So the school has to take steps to afford the student with a disability that equal opportunity for participation to the maximum extent appropriate based on that student's need. The school has to ensure the student with disability does participate with non-disabled students in those academic classes and other educational programs. It could be vocational, educational, and academic classes. I'm sorry, in art, music, consumer education, career, technical education, field trips, and convocations. That's just, the tip of the iceberg. So students should have access to those non-academic times, and again, to those extracurricular activities. Maybe it's lunch, those meals, recesses, athletic, recreational activities. If there is a school-sponsored groups or clubs, any sort of social programming that you might be involved with, graduation ceremonies, and student employment. So, there's a whole plethora here of participation with non-disabled peers. We take for granted, I think, times, um, maybe I should back this up. I take for granted how um, immersed or non-immersed you are in that area with your disabled peers and your non-disabled peers. You can be with your non-disabled peers and be immersed in that arena and have very good goals that pertain to that. Um, and you may not be around your disabled peers very often. Or it can be vice versa, that you're around your disabled, for lack of a better term, um, your disabled students, and maybe not so much towards the non-disabled, that general education. So we would just want to make sure that we're getting a balance there, that, it is what is appropriate. That's the key here, is what is appropriate for that student, for your child. What does that look like for them? Nobody else. Again, we're talking about an IEP, an individualized educational program. And so we want to make sure that, again, all of those things they're able to participate with their non-disabled peers, that they are afforded that FAPE, that free appropriate public education, and that we know that if there are services that the student does receive during the day, um, those are expected to be available to them when they engage in those extracurricular activities and non-academic activities. And I want to make sure that you understand this. So let me read this verbatim, because this is something that's come up. I was just called and asked about this from a coworker not too long ago. So let's make sure that we do understand this. And it says the services that the student receives during the school day are expected to be available to them when they engage in extracurricular and non-academic activities that are available to their non-disabled peers. So if the case conference committee determines that a student needs supplementary aids and services in order to participate with non-disabled peers in extracurricular or other non-academic activities, the case conference committee should include these additional services in the IEP. It's a lot of information held in just that one little paragraph. And I get it. I absolutely, absolutely 110% get it. The services that the student does receive during the school day, that's expected to be available to them when engaging in extracurricular and non-academic activities. So these are see, this is it can be so touchy, because you have such variables when it comes to being with your peers, being with your non-disabled peers, being with your disabled peers, and that it's such a, you know, there's just room for interpretation. I just want to make sure that if your child is in school, they have a right to be with their non-disabled peers. And so, you know, if it's 30 minutes a day because they can't go outside, but they can go to the cafeteria, then, what's the harm? I'm just asking, what's the harm with that? Um, Generally, there is none. So I'll get off that soapbox. So if the case conference committee decides that there are times when they will not participate with non-disabled students, they will identify those situations in the IEP. There has to be an exclamation of the extent, if any, to which the student will not participate. And it has to provide that rationale for that decision. Again, here is the little 511 IAC, that's your Indiana Article 7. So we have specially designed instruction. And if you have been in this realm for very long, you know what specially designed instruction is. And there's a place on the IEP that calls for it. I'm not going to go into reading this verbatim, but it is instruction that's adapted to address the student's unique disability needs. Let's move on to related services. So a related service is that if a student is eligible for special education services, in order to receive those related services, that list of related services is provided at that case conference, and the list is not an evaluation. It's not an evaluation for anyway, my brain just quit working. So the related services, an example here is a child who has other health impairment. They may need physical therapy to help them learn to get around the school and more independence. My son had an orthopedic impairment, and that's what that OI is, orthopedic impairment. Um, and so he didn't go up and down stairs very well on his own. And so it can get kind of touchy whenever you're thinking about those related services. Ever in doubt, call. Ever in doubt, you're more than welcome to get a hold of us. You're more than welcome to get a hold of your special education director, your teacher of record, whoever it is that you might have those questions that you can ask. But remember, a related service is it's a service. It could be occupational therapy. It could be, well, speech therapy is not a related service. It could be a transportation, um, mental health, mental health. There's a whole list of things in Article 7 that we could look up that would cover that related service. So there's a list. It's probably not an exhaustive list, but it is a list of things that when we talk about a child's needs and the concerns of a parent, then a lot of times you can connect those together. So ESY, the extended school year, and we are getting towards that time of year that this is talked about a lot. Extended school year is not necessarily done in the summertime. It can be done any time of the year as long as you have the room for that and you're able to have that conversation. So extended school year, it has to be discussed in the case conference. So ESY is any service that is provided beyond the normal school year or school day. Then the case conference committee must decide if the student needs extra support that cannot be provided during the school day. If there's a fear of regression or there are concerns that the student might not progress, they may have a tape to hang on to. It's just one of those things that when you talk about an extended school year, sometimes it can be a very touchy area. And so I don't want it to be overlooked, but understand that extended school year can be done anytime. It can be done before school. It can be done after school. It can be done on spring break. It can be done on winter break. It can be done during the summer. It can be done, anytime. It does not have to be done during summer break. And it doesn't have to be done in a brick and mortar building. Extended school year can be done in various different ways. And so when you think about it, think outside that box, especially if it's something that that the student is going to, maybe it has to be done during the school. Um, maybe it has to be done during summer break. And so you want it to be done so that they are learning and they're progressing, but you don't want it to be a punishment either. And we know that if they offer a summer school program, um, that's not extended school year, because that's available to everybody. So when you talk about summer school, and I don't even know if they still call it summer school, but extended school year is something that can be very useful. It can be very important. Um, and, in my personal, with my son, we did use extended school year, especially in between when he was in preschool. His birthday was in May. And so when he was turning 3, and we decided that, as a case conference committee, that there was going to be regression and that we needed to make sure that, since First Steps was stopping on May 15th, his 3rd birthday, we needed services to be picked up and for him to be able to have things until he went back to school in August. So, that was going to be a big chunk of time for him. And we had already lost and had regression with First Steps. So we already had that kind of documented. And we were on the cusp of then being able to kind of recoup some of those things. And so we did that, extended school year for that first, from when he turned 3 and went to preschool. And then that next summer, we did it again, because we knew that he was going to be going from preschool that following year. He went from, that 3 to 4, and then he went from 4 to 5. So we did it that summer. And then the summer that he went from going out of the preschool into kindergarten, we did it that year again too. And it wasn't, again, it wasn't in the brick and mortar. It wasn't all, sitting and doing paperwork and things. It was just a different way of, making sure that he did not lose some of that communication that he had gained. And we just, yeah. And again, he's 28, so that was a lot of years ago. So, when I talk about, the personal part, my personal experience with that, it can all be changed, now. Um, again, it's just we want to make sure that the conversation is being had, because in the IEP, there's a section for extended school year. So it has to be talked about. Um, yeah, okay, I'll just stop. So accommodations, that's part of our IEP, those accommodations. And there is a blue hyperlink here. And so I want to click on this because this is the link to those statewide assessments. And so this would be your information for, any of that statewide assessments that you are, having questions about, and what is going to be acceptable for some of those things. And, you know, as you see just in the table of contents here, we have text to speech, we have, human reader, we have a calculator. So those are just there on that section 3 of that I learn, I read, and I am accommodations. And so you do have the WIDA accommodations, the SAT school day universal features and accommodations. So this little book here is pretty useful for some of those things. And so click on that hyperlink if you're going to be using, if you have a copy of, this downloaded in your computer, so that you are able to, see what those look like for your student or your child. Okay. let me, come on, you're behind there. This is the only, there we go. Um, Here we go. Sorry about that. That little bar gets in the way. So those accommodations, there's several different things that you could do for an accommodation. Remember, an accommodation is something that helps um, support those classroom learning activities, that those classroom uh, opportunities that are there, and that you will need that accommodation for. And it's done every day. It's not just something that pops up on the statewide assessment. It is something that you do use every day in the classroom. And because you also have to be able to use that accommodation on those statewide tests. You just, used to it, the big thing was a scribe. And so that was the big thing back in the day. And so you would have them go to a case conference and they would hurry and write a scribe in there. But in reality, that wasn't appropriate because that student didn't know how to use the scribe. Because when you use a scribe, you have to be able to spell the words, you have to be able to know where to put the appropriate commas and periods and things like that. So, you've got to be careful about what you're using. And a real hard lesson that I learned was about accommodations and asking my own child about the accommodations, because I didn't want an accommodation to be a crutch. And so I was hesitant on a lot of them. But as he got older, we started having those conversations about, do you think this would help you? Do you think this would help you? Does this not, is this more cumbersome or more of a bother than what it is? So you have to be kind of careful of what you're doing, and you don't want to overload a bunch of accommodations because, again, there's something that they do on a daily basis that they're using. This is just a quick little list that's here up on the screen. It's not an exhaustive list, but it's just, some common things that have come up, like frequent breaks, extended time, whether it be on test, whether it be on homework, whether it be on, classroom work, whatever that looks like. But just remember that an accommodation is to help support that classroom learning, and it has to be provided on a daily basis. And look at that little assessment booklet here, because it's going to tell you what's allowed and what is not allowed on that test. Okay, it is 1:57, and I think we're going to have to stop here so that we don't go over. I do appreciate each and every one of you being here. Can I have the link for the training for CPAC this Thursday with Lisa and Plainfield? Mindy, do you mind if you give me just a second? I will jump out here and give you that link. So let me take this down. So let me stop sharing. And then Mindy, I will put that in our chat box there for you. So let me go get it. And again, this is all my fault because I did not get it out in time. So this is why it's not on our website yet. And let me go back here. Okay, Mindy, will you click on that link for me and make sure that you do get to get out there and get it to register. But please, and if you guys ever hear me say there's, something that's coming up and you can't find it, or that you uh, want me to, to either talk to you about, or um, again, you can't find it or something, let me know and I will be happy to send you the link. Most of the time, it's probably my fault that it's not gotten out there, because I've either not gotten the information in time, or it's just, I've just lost it or something. Again, we have really good girls that run our website, and they do a fabulous job of keeping all of that stuff online for us. Um, so having said that, and I know that I said I wouldn't go over, we do have some other webinars, and they do come up twice a month. So we will be looking at some summer things too that are going to be coming up. And let me see if I can real quick go here, and I'm trying to see. I know that Peggy, if you hang on just a second, I might be able to drop this in there for you as well. So hang on and let me get to my in-source page. There is definitely a lag. Here we go. Okay, Peggy, I think it went out. Yep, there it is. So there's the blue hyperlink there for the Thursdays um, webinar that's coming up. But again, we will have Beth Shepard, Elizabeth Shepard from Plainfield will be here. She's the director from there. And we will have Stephanie Garner, she is the parent uh, lead for that. Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. Next week, we will start with accommodations and modifications, and I will try and not drone on as much as I do and stay on track a little bit better. So thank you for being here. I greatly appreciate it. See everybody on Thursday. Don't forget, Tuesday is In Touch, and so you'll be able to see Jessica Terry and Michelle Arcatana. They will be on In Touch tomorrow at 3:30. Jump on there and join them. And they have some great information that's coming up as well. Have a great day, everyone, and I will see you on Thursday.